I'm Dyer, and this is the Real Football Factories International. I played Tommy Johnson in the film The Football Factory, which was all about football violence. Fucking nutters. Then I travelled the UK and met the real football firms. Now, I'm going international. 9 countries in 2 months. Around the hooligan world in 60 days. A whole new level of football violence. We'll be in riots. We'll get tear gassed, chased, and even shot at. It's going to be quite a trip. Tonight I'm in Poland, home to some of the most feared football firms in the world.
U nas jak jest wojna, to jest wojna na całego. We wszystkich, na każdym froncie.
Świat zagra, nie taki kolor.
Już widzisz tego przeciwnika, to nagle klapki, wszystko jakby wiesz, wyłącza się wszystko.
Around 100 hooligan gangs and thousands of hooligans having tear-ups across the country. It's a crazy place, a cauldron of football violence.
In the Polish Premiership, the hooligans have a league of their own. The hardest, the most brutal, top the league.
Just imagine what it was like back in the 80s. Britain's hooligan heyday. Well, that's Poland today. And I'm going to take you right onto the front line. I'm going inside the Polish firms, right to the centre of this violent world. I'll be face to face with blokes in balaclavas, in shady places straight out of a snuff movie. And I'm going to experience the most intense derby in Polish football. Part inferno, part all-out riot. I've got to admit, I'm a bit worried about who I'm going to meet. I mean, are they going to let me into their world, or are they going to tell me in no uncertain terms where to go? And will somebody please tell me why I agreed to come here? Because it's puzzling me. No, I need a little bar, I need a little cheeky vodka. What's Polish for Dutch courage? No. Poland is in the grip of football violence. To find out why, I went to 3 cities. Gdańsk, Kraków and Warsaw. My journey started in Gdańsk, which has a special place in the hearts of the Polish people. In the 80s, violence exploded on the streets of this city, with football fans from Lechia Gdańsk on the front line. But this wasn't hooliganism, they had a political goal. Now, there isn't many countries where you can say the fighting spirit of football fans helped change the course of a country's history, but that's exactly what happened here in Poland. Lechia Gdańsk fans became the foot soldiers for Solidarity, the political group behind Polish independence, and they helped overthrow a communist government. Poland was a communist country until the late 80s. Here in Gdańsk, fans of Lechia Football Club were active in Solidarity, the underground protest movement which brought down the regime. The fans fought for the Polish people when they squared up to their enemy, the communist militia.
Wytworzył się ten dystans, my oni, prawda? Coś, co później zróżnicowało bardzo to społeczeństwo, a już w tej mikrostrukturze społeczność kibicowską z przedstawicielami władzy ludowej, no bo to było to tak zwane zbrojne ramię.
Mecz Lechii się kończył i każdy wracał na dzielnicę, a tych bandytów z ZOMO było pełno.
Tak,
bo zachodzenie w szaliku, sklepu się nie wracało.
Ty miałeś szalik.
These fans were banged up and beaten up, but they wouldn't let up. Lechia's ground was one of the few places where the people of the city could protest without being battered by the militia. After matches, thousands would march through the streets, chanting anti-communist slogans. They had a strength in numbers the militia feared. These fans became local legends as Solidarity swept to power in the late 80s. But in the 90s, Polish firms didn't fight for the people anymore. They fought between themselves. Hooliganism exploded across the country. Today, Polish firms are feared across Europe. I've been told that Kraków has got the naughtiest of the lot. So guess where Muggins is off to after the break? Join me as I head to Kraków to meet the firms of today.
Cracovia. That sounds naughty, doesn't it? It's a naughty sounding sort of team. Come from West Ham, it sounds naughty anyway. Welcome back to the International Football Factories. For this episode, I'm in Poland. Since the collapse of communism, hooliganism's been an issue here. And by all accounts, the Kraków derby is as hard as it gets. Wisła Kraków versus Cracovia, otherwise known in these parts as the Holy War.
Kraków used to be the capital of Poland, and no doubt helped by the number of British stag doos that were coming here. Tourism was booming.
Not a bad gaff, this Kraków, I must say. It's quite smart.
But there was another darker side to the city, not always obvious at first glance. Kraków has two football teams, Wisła and Cracovia. Their firms are two of the most notorious hooligan gangs in the country, living out a 24/7 war in Kraków. They were Wisła Sharks and Cracovia's firm, called Anty Wisła. Their hatred was so intense that Cracovia even named their firm against their enemy. It could kick off between these two anywhere. And while firms in other parts of the country disapproved of weapons, in the hooligan world, Kraków was known as the city of knives.
Back on tour, 1, 2, 3, we all back on 4, you better wake up.
The main battleground was in and around the housing estates across the city. For people living here, the collapse of communism had brought a failing economy and high unemployment. Especially among young people, it was a breeding ground for hooligan gangs. These estates were known locally as blocks. The tougher estates, in a similar way to the projects of New York, inspired a Polish hip-hop movement that aimed to reflect their world. These estates supported one club or the other. You could find one supporting Cracovia, next door to an estate dominated by Wisła, which meant violence could happen anywhere, anytime. Przemek took me on a walk around one of these blocks.
Okay, so this will be the Azori estate.
Yeah.
Could you just explain to me a little bit about which club would own this estate?
Well, it's a typical Wisła football club area.
Wisła, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, because you know, the whole town, the whole city is divided into territories.
So, if anybody supported Cracovia, they wouldn't come to this estate, no?
Well...
Or if they did, they'd be stupid, would they?
Yeah, it would be...
Stupid move,
risky
yeah?
and stupid, yeah.
So, just looking around, would would the hooligans live here, yeah?
Yeah.
Most of them, yeah? So
Well,
there could be eyes watching us now, yeah?
Graffiti was all over the gaff, and a fair bit was aimed at Cracovia, of course.
Let's start with this here. What does this mean? Something about
Well,
Cracovia,
it can
obviously.
be translated like Cracovia is like a whore who receives everybody.
Okay, quite a bad diss. The Kraków derby's 100 years old, making it the oldest derby in Polish football. Now, the teams are just 500 metres apart, separated by this piece of park. Wisła, Cracovia. Now, they're constantly in each other's faces, making the city particularly tense.
Krakow's hooligans' love of knives has led to bloodshed and deaths. In 1998, a knife was thrown by a Wisła fan at Italian international Dino Baggio during the UEFA Cup match between Wisła and Parma. Baggio needed 5 stitches to a head wound. While there were deaths on the streets of Kraków, in the 18 months leading up to this derby, 8 fans died in football-related incidents. And these included a 21-year-old Wisła fan who was stabbed to death after last season's derby. I was walking straight into a war zone. First, I was going to meet Cracovia's firm, Anty Wisła. They were defined by their hatred of Wisła's firm. It's as if no other hooligans matter to them. Titsa was one of their top boys, and you don't become that by making the tea, do you know what I mean? He wasn't used to letting the media into his closed world, but I hoped he'd fill me in on life inside the Polish firms. But until the day before our meeting, Cracovia fans weren't even going to the derby. They clashed with police a couple of weeks earlier, and the Polish FA banned them from the match. But they just found out that the ban was overturned. It was decided that both sets of fans had to attend the 100-year anniversary of the Kraków derby. These guys don't trust strangers, and getting access to their world isn't easy, let me tell you.
Let me just explain something to you viewers at home of how this works. Is the fact that researchers come out here first, they make contact with these people. It's on their terms, obviously, because, you know, we're talking to dangerous people, we're talking to people that are very serious about what they do. They don't know us from Adam. We could be old Bill. Now, they've told me that they want to meet us at this petrol garage, this unknown petrol garage, which has a real snuff film feel to it. And they want to take me to a tunnel. A tunnel. That's where they want to do the. That's where they want to tell me about their firm and, you know, their passion in a tunnel. So I've smoked 800 cigarettes. Jatan as well. Sorry, product placement, but Jatan is a good salmon. And I've got to say I'm a bit apprehensive. So let's just wait. It's the waiting game. It's the waiting game. It's on their terms. I don't want to upset them. Might have a bit of joy, I think they're here. I'll keep me nut down. I don't know how they're going to react to me, so let's see what happens. I might look like a prick before just telling them, yeah. I knew I should have had a fucking Benson. So we're now following them to an undisclosed tunnel. Good job I've got 20 security guards with me. I so haven't. It's about composure, it's about trust, and it's about respect. Here we go, let's have it.
The Anty Wisła firm were often targeted by the police, so they like to operate under a cloak of secrecy. But Titsa was waiting for me in the shadows with other members of his firm.
Is that West Ham? West Ham out there. I just want to say, first of all, you know, why in a tunnel? Why in a subway? I've got to say, a bit intimidating.
Słuchaj, jest to nasze super miejsce takie. Swego czasu wszelkim gronem zjeżdżaliśmy się tu na takie różne wieczorne imprezy. Takie odludzie, byliśmy tu sami, no police.
Perfect place to have a party, really, if you think that's what he's saying to me, is there's no old Bill, which is a mad thing for me. That's why they brought me down here. No old Bill, nobody around for a long way.
Z każdej Polski jesteśmy filmem. Naprawdę dużo też z Krakowi wyszło.
Titsa told me that Cracovia's firm blazed the trail in the 90s that the others followed. They learned fast from English firms and adopted English style and terrace fashion, wearing Doc Martens and Levi's 501s. They stood out from the crowd.
Byliśmy pierwszą ekipą, która przyszła na stadion wszyscy na ciemno ubrani, byliśmy w czarnych kominiarkach. Po prostu weszliśmy na czarno ubrani i w pewnym momencie na jedno słowo wszyscy ubrali kominiarki i wpadliśmy na sektor wielki popłoch, nie? No i było tam po prostu... Wszyscy byli zaskoczeni.
Titsa said it was impossible to have fights in Krakow without weapons. They always feared their enemies would be tooled up.
Nikt z kibiców na pewno z grupy nie wychodzi z chęcią zabójstwa. Na pewno nikt nie wychodzi z chęcią zabójstwa. W Krakowie się od dłuższego czasu utarło, że kibice używają noży i robią to. Praktycznie w Krakowie masz wojnę 24 na dobę.
What was it that made Titsa fight?
Już widzisz tego przeciwnika, to nagle klapki, wszystko jakby wiesz, wyłącza się wszystko.
For him, being in the middle of a tear-up was like wearing headphones. You blocked out everything else and totally focused on the enemy in front of you.
Jest to super uczucie.
In communist times, Poland's most successful clubs were linked to government-backed professions. There was the army team of Legia Warsaw, while Wisła was the police side. This didn't make them too popular with Cracovia fans, whose club stood in the shadow of the successful Wisła.
No i stąd chyba taka największa nienawiść między kibicami Krakowi i Wisły. U nas potocznie nazywa się tak policjanta, nie? Że my jesteśmy dog hunters, łowcy psów. Kibice Wisły przez nas nazywani psy, no, jak policjanci.
Nienawidzimy Wisły jak policji.
No, nienawidzimy ich jak policji.
With these firms despising each other, surely something would go off at the derby.
Będzie bardzo gorąca atmosfera, na pewno. Mnóstwo policji, mnóstwo. Przypuszczam, że będzie jeden z lepszych meczów, jakie zobaczysz na żywo. Jeden z lepszych meczów. Przypuszczam, że będziesz to pamiętał bardzo długo.
Just want to make sure I'm out of earshot. Listen, it's always an odd thing, you know, with the translation. I think internationally it doesn't really matter. I can understand, I can see the passion, I can see what they're talking about. You know, it's the whole. Just come back here, just a second. Don't know what to make of that, really, being a West Ham fan, but I'm quite relieved that it's over and that they treated me with respect. They're quite busy people. They've got a lot of organising to do tomorrow, obviously. I don't know what for. But it's opened my eyes up a little bit, I must say, you know. I still think that the firms in Poland are a little bit more serious, you know. I need to go and get my nut down.
I'd obviously hit it off with Titsa, because next day he gave me a call and said we were meeting up again. So I had to be ready for the mean streets of Krakow. Could this be a condemned man's last meal? He agreed to show us the real world of the Krakow firms. Around the derby, the streets were at their most dangerous. Ambushes were commonplace. What Cracovia's firm called dog hunting. During their hits on rival gangs, they would steal scarves as trophies, a mark of disrespect to their victims. Stealing flags and scarves was a huge deal in Krakow. For the firms, it was like escaping with your enemy's colours on the battlefield, and the scarves would be burnt at matches. He drove through Krakow's tough neighbourhoods. As the 90s began, the reputation of Cracovia's firm grew. Wisła's firm were the enemy.
Na przykład tutaj na wprost nas jest osiedle wiślackie i wjeżdżali na przykład jedni drugim. O, wczoraj na przykład 2 szaliki trafili tu w sklepie, nie? Się wypuścili debile. No i tutaj bardzo często dochodziło do bijatyk tu na tych przystankach, wiesz.
Thinking back to our first meeting, a tunnel seemed an appropriate place for a favourite ambush point.
Zaraz jest tam taki tunel i tam kibice często Cracovia stała. No, stała banda, wiesz, stało tam 30-40 osób na przykład i wiesz, jeden na górze sobie stał na przystanku. Podjeżdżał autobus, patrzył się, są szaliki, tylko gwizdnął i wiesz, wszyscy wypadali, wiesz, ze sprzętem zdalnym. A policja jak jeździła, to wiesz, nie widziała nas, nie?
Titzer got a phone call. Suddenly he had stuff to attend to, and I weren't going to ask what.
No.
That was the cue for me to do the slips. But I'd now met Cracovia's firm. It was the night before the derby. It was time to meet their bitter rivals, Wisła's firm, the Sharks. Let's hope they don't find out I'd spent the day with their sworn enemy. After the break, the Sharks get their teeth into me.
Jesus Christ. Well, this is naughty. This is fucking naughty.
And I enter the Armageddon, otherwise known as the Kraków derby. Fire, brimstone and ripped out seats.
I'm earning me pound note this week, don't you worry about that. I'm fucking earning me pound note this week. Get on that. Welcome back to Poland, part of my epic trip around the world's real football factories. And welcome to the Holy War, the crazy Kraków derby.
Ever since I'd arrived in Kraków, I'd been told the derby between Wisła and Cracovia was a must-see event, something I would never forget.
100-year derby. This is a fucking main event.
I'd already met Cracovia's firm called Anty Wisła. And now I was about to meet their bitter enemies, Wisła's hooligans, the Sharks. And the whole cloak and dagger thing started all over again.
I'm on my way to meet the Wisła Sharks. Apparently, the police are quite on top of it around here. So, you know, they're on the run. They know how the old bill work here. Obviously, we don't know what's going on. We've got to do as we're told. I don't know where I'm going, to be honest. I haven't got a clue.
I needed a bit of that Polish-Dutch courage.
I'm going to keep that up my sleeve and all, just in case. You never know, do you? I'm joking. Of course I am. Why would I do that? One more shot and that's it, man. Let's have it. But I've got to hold my hands up, you know, and you should understand this at home. You know, this is guerrilla filming, you know, my pupper's flapping a little bit, you know. I'm not a mug, but me pupper's flapping. Fucking hell, man. Jesus Christ. Man, this is naughty. This is fucking naughty. I suppose this is it. This is where we get out. This is where we depart.
I was miles from anywhere, meeting the Sharks on derelict land. It was definitely shallow grave territory, and the Sharks wore balaclavas to hide their identities from the police.
What are you doing here? I don't know, man. I don't know, man. Where the fuck am I? You know what I mean? I'm like, I want to ask you, are you inspired by the firms in England from the past, maybe?
Znaczy, no wiadomo, każdy, kto się interesuje, to wie, że słyszał o angielskich chuliganach i wie, że mniej więcej chuliganka się, można powiedzieć, stamtąd wywodzi. Tam się wszystko zaczęło, aczkolwiek teraz oni nas w ogóle nie inspirują. Całkiem inne realia u nas, całkiem u nich.
When Polish firms clashed with English hooligans, they could see there was a major difference between them. The Poles were more organised.
4 English fans are in hospital after being injured in clashes around Warsaw Old Town. One has serious wounds after being stabbed in a park.
ale no my sądzimy, że jesteśmy lepsi od nich, że jesteśmy najlepsi i każdemu damy radę.
They said English hooligans only fought after a few beers, but for Polish hooligans, and especially those from Kraków, getting pissed before a fight wasn't a good idea.
U nas jak jest wojna, to jest wojna na całego, we wszystkich, na każdym froncie.
The firm was a way of life for the Sharks. Smoking and drinking made you weak, they said, while gym work and martial arts prepared you for battle, and weapons were integral to their lifestyle.
W Krakowie jest używany sprzęt i jest on codziennością. Są wszelkiego rodzaju sprzęt, zaczynając od krótkich noży, czy jakichś pałek
kuchennych, kończąc na rolniczych sprzętach,
czy nawet przy koktajlach Mołotowa. No, pistolety też się zdarzały. Był przypadek, prawda, że ostra amunicja była używana. Gazówki, można powiedzieć, w tej chwili już są. Dużo osób nosi pistolety gazowe czy na śruty.
Noszenie sprzętu w Krakowie może nam niejednokrotnie uratować życie i zdrowie. Ja złapałem parę razy nóż w rękę, bo już w bebech szedł.
Big game tomorrow, yeah? Big derby. Is this the biggest derby in Poland?
For us. Dla nas największe są derby. Najważniejszy, to jest najważniejszy dzień w naszym życiu.
Jeżeli chodzi o mecze, to najważniejsze. Wszyscy na to czekamy i...
Najstarsze w Polsce.
Tak, i największa mobilizacja jest na teraz.
I'd met both firms now and reckoned it would kick off at the derby. I could have gone to the match with the firms, but I didn't think that was a good idea. I had to be objective, keeping my distance from any violence at the game.
Just want to look after my boat, and my boat's very important to me, you know? And my railings. See them? Without them, there's no more lead roles. I might get the odd part in the bill, maybe get down to the last three a casualty, you know, then you don't get it. I'm joking, but actually my pupper's flapping.
I was going to the derby with Wisła's ultras. They were responsible for the performance inside the stadium. Huge banners, flares, choreographed chanting and burning the scarves of their bitter rivals. It was the 100th anniversary of the Kraków derby. I checked out the stadium before kick-off to see how they'd keep these firms apart. The ultras' preparation was in full swing.
Now over here, this is where the Cracovia firm are going to be. They've got a tiny little section in the corner, so they're just building these fences today. Hopefully they're going to stand up, you know what I mean? But you know, it seems like a small amount of people, but when that's full of firm, that's going to be naughty. That's going to be loud.
As kick-off approached, the atmosphere was building in the streets outside. And nearly 1,000 police were called up in case anything kicked off. Wisła was top of the Polish league, with Cracovia mid-table, so what happened on the pitch was of major importance.
Well, I just want to explain a little bit about what's going on here. Is that we're actually now in Sector AE, which is the Cracovia firm, and they're having a bit of trouble getting in. Now, just have a look at the old bill. I've been to a few football matches in my time, but the old bill here is absolutely unbelievable. They've got water cannons over there. There's like riot vans everywhere you turn. I mean, it's a really mad vibe. Every time a bus rolls in with the Cracovia in, there's a big cheer and it seems like it's going to kick off. There's dogs everywhere. The old Bill are looking at me now. It's all a bit, you know, it's on top. I've got to tell you now. It's a bit worrying. It brings home to me how important this game is, man. We are at the Kraków derby, man, and that's a naughty, naughty fixture. So I'm slipping in with the ultras. You're quite military about it. I've got to keep my nut down. Let's have a good game, man. I'm very excited about it. I'll see you after. Don't go nowhere.
I was in the Ultra Wisła section, one whole side of the stadium containing 5,000 mental Wisła fans. I was invited in as their guest. Cracovia fans were placed at the opposite end of the stadium. Their firm was in the away section. And I was told that Wisła's firm would slip into the section next door. I reckoned it would definitely go off over there somewhere. And throughout the first half, I regularly checked out what was going on.
Get on that, mate. I tell you what, this firm means business, mate. We're not fucking about here. I'm in the mix.
The Ultras put on their show, and the game was ready to start. The atmosphere inside the stadium was electric, and inside the first minute, Wisła scored, sparking chaotic scenes at the Ultras' end. Cracovia's fans were shocked by this early goal, but they remained defiant. But Wisła were in party mood, and everything was directed by an ultra with a loudspeaker. The Ultras pulled out flares, which were banned in Polish stadiums for safety reasons. Now, I can't say I've ever seen this sort of thing down the Hammers. It was 2-0 in less than half an hour. Down at the away end, there were two sets of warring fans that clearly hated each other, kept apart by the fence I'd seen erected earlier today. Now Wisła enraged Cracovia's firm by trying to burn one of their shirts. Police thought things were going too far and stepped in. They removed the shirt, and Wisła kicked off. The passion and tension in the air was unmistakable. Something seemed to be happening everywhere I looked. And the old Bill were trying to keep a lid on it all. One of Wisła's players was pulled down, and they were awarded a penalty. Cracovia's firm were incensed. And at half-time, the tension was cranked up further as Wisła's ultras delivered the ultimate provocation. They burnt hundreds of Cracovia scarves in a curtain of fire.
Just want to explain what's going on here. It's basically all these scarves along this banner here of Cracovia, which have been obviously thieved throughout the year. And they're basically going to set light to them. It's going to go up though. The petrol's coming out as I speak. It's unbelievable. Cracovia just got to look on, watch it. Here we go. Here we go. get on this burnage. This is what happens when they win. Imagine if they lost.
A couple of days before the match, everyone brought the scarves to the ultras, who sewed them together into this curtain of fire. The aim was to anger Cracovia's fans and show them how many of their supporters had been ambushed during the year. 500 Cracovia scarves meant 500 whacks to the head. Cracovia's firm was furious. They tried to break through the fence dividing them from their bitter enemies, and when police moved into Cracovia's end, all hell broke loose. Police used tear gas on Cracovia's firm, and as they battled with police, Wisła fans all around the stadium chanted that the coppers should leave Cracovia's firm alone. It seemed that they hated the old bill more than they hated their bitterest enemy. I looked over and saw that Cracovia's firm weren't finished yet. They ran at the police. The police responded with more tear gas. There was a clear standoff inside the Cracovia end, with police at the bottom of the stairs. Trouble reignited in the Wisła section as well. These really were scenes straight out of Britain in the mid-80s. Eventually, after about 10 hate-filled minutes, the situation in the stadium calmed down. The final score was 3-0 to Wisła, which the players celebrated with the fans. Titsa, a Cracovia top boy, had earlier told me I'd never forget the derby, and he wasn't wrong.
I don't know what to say, to be honest with you. I can't stress enough about how it feels like being back in the 80s. You know, with the tear-ups that I was witnessing, the seats being ripped out, kicking off with the old bill. You know, it really is. They're in a time warp, these lot. I mean, this is the biggest game in Polish football. And I'm absolutely shattered, I'll be straight with you. I've not had no booze, I'm sober as a judge. I've learnt a lot tonight, honestly. And I just fancy a nice, great big Polish sausage now. Nice Polish sausage, a nice pivo. Pivo means beer, yeah, see, I'm learning. And I lay down. Ta-da.
After the break, I learned how firms in other parts of the country settle their differences. Welcome to Polish Fight Club.
Welcome to the International Football Factories. This week I'm in Poland, surrounded by absolute raving lunatics.
I'd already been to the biggest game in Polish football, the Kraków derby, quite unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Next stop on my journey was Warsaw.
Firms in other parts of the country, like here in Warsaw, don't look too favourably about what's happening in Kraków. They've agreed a kind of no weapons pact. Instead, they organise pre-arranged fights in the forest. Same numbers, doctors at hand. It's almost Queensberry rules.
jestem w stanie zrozumieć osoby, które gdzieś tam się umawiają w miejscach ustronnych, postronnych, gdzie uczestniczą oni sami zainteresowani tą walką w ramach jakichś jasno określonych reguł, bez używania niebezpiecznego sprzętu itd. Jeżeli mają być walki gladiatorów, niech będą gdzieś z dala od stadionu.
These mass brawls were organised by phone, and you always agreed the exact numbers in advance. You didn't want 15 of your lot turning up to face 40 from the rival firm.
To, co najbardziej niepokoi, to jest to inne chuligaństwo, takie, gdzie nie ma żadnych zasad, że używa się, powiedzmy, niebezpiecznych narzędzi, to dzisiaj zabija w ogóle ten ruch kibicowski.
The firms of Warsaw and Poznan, the two other major forces in Polish hooliganism, wouldn't talk to me on camera. They wanted to keep their underground world shrouded in secrecy. But I'd been told that the Kraków firms ignored the rules they followed, pre-arranged fights with no weapons. The Kraków firms were a law to themselves. After the trouble at the Kraków derby, newspapers reported that 13 people had been arrested, 75 seats were ripped out, and 2 security guards were taken to hospital. But I was shocked to learn that Wisła were fined just £8 for the fact that trouble erupted at their stadium, while Cracovia were fined just £2,000 and the cost of any damage inside the ground. Wisła were top of the Polish league. What would have happened if that was Old Trafford? Finance seems central to the future of Polish football and how it dealt with the firms.
It needs some money. The game badly needs some money. And that means attracting investors, and that means actually attracting middle-class people to turn up to the game. They want it to be a family game. This is what the government are talking about now. They're looking at what happened in Britain in the 1980s, and they're saying, well, how did the British react?
Problem cen biletów jest też ważny w Polsce. Pójście na mecz z żoną, dziećmi to często jest naprawdę duży wydatek i po prostu ludzi nie stać na to, bo w Polsce nie żyje się wcale lekko.
There's a big problem there. Where are you going to get this middle class people from? Where are you going to get the investment? So it's going to take a generation to change Polish football. It's not going to happen like it did in Britain in 10 years.
Be brave. Clench fists.
For the Kraków firms, life goes on. The 24/7 war continues on the streets of the city, and the next generation of hooligans is being prepared.
Jest to u nas wrodzona nienawiść, z ojca na syna przechodzi.
I potomkowie, i można powiedzieć całe osiedla, prawda?
Każdy, który to spróbuje, powiem szczerze, to każdemu się to spodoba. A kto tego nie spróbował, nie wie co to jest, to powie, że jesteśmy, nazwie nas głupkami.
Exclusive Real Football Factories International webisodes are playing now on bravo.co.uk, and there's more highly volatile crowds after the break with UFC Unleashed.